Now, why there are some extraordinary measures being taken in the state of Wisconsin to find enough workers to fill jobs, including a multi-million-dollar ad campaign to attract millennials and a job training program for prison inmates. Economics correspondent Paul Solman has our report. It's part of our weekly series, Making Sense, and it's also the latest in our series, Chasing the Dream on Poverty and Opportunity in America.
The signs of the times in Wisconsin. Help wanted on virtually every restaurant window, storefront, and city bus. Even public TV has openings. An aging population and few immigrants has this state, with a record low jobless rate of 2.9%, projecting 45,000 more job openings by 2024 than workers to fill them.
The reality is, anywhere in southeastern Wisconsin right now, if you need employees, you're struggling to find them.
Eric Anderson, CEO of Basin Precision Machining, which makes parts for, among others, Milwaukee's Harley-Davidson. In spite of high-tech machinery that requires fewer operators these days, Anderson wants to expand and is desperate to hire.
You still need how many people?
20.
Now, right now?
Right now. I got 20 jobs right now.
The labor crunch, he says, has become the #1 threat to his business.
I'm on, I guess you'd call it a full-on charm offensive. Where, as a CEO, usually you're looking to grow the business, and for me, this situation is such a revenue limiter that I spend about half my time on HR, promotion. That's why I was so glad when you folks wanted to come talk about this very topic.
And you're doing a little recruiting while you're talking to me?
Pretty much every waking hour I'm doing a little recruiting.
Wisconsin's answer to the worker shortage? Trying to lure labor from out of state.
An hour commute or an hour with friends? In Wisconsin, the average commute is less than 22 minutes.
The $1 million ad campaign was a blatant appeal to millennials in Chicago and anyone who didn't know the attractions of Wisconsin.
They thought of the traditional things, the beer, cheese, Packers, football.
Tricia Braun runs the state's economic development agency.
They didn't say things like, IT software development jobs or great healthcare jobs, engineering jobs. So we needed to make sure that those, along with messages about our quality of life, were getting out there to the potential talent that we could recruit.
Braun says it's too early to know if the campaign is working. But even if it does work, another state initiative will make the shortage more acute. A 20 million square foot Foxconn plant being constructed in southern Wisconsin is promising to create 13,000 more jobs. Foxconn, a Chinese electronics manufacturer, got a $4.3 billion tax credit to locate here.
It's about $3 billion from the state itself, and then the rest is coming from local governments.
In cash, says economist Mark Levine.
Because Wisconsin manufacturers do not pay taxes, the tax credit will be converted into cash payments.
Wisconsin will give Foxconn
a check, right.
Meanwhile, says Levine, for decades, there have been more than enough unemployed Wisconsinites the money could have been used to retrain. Victims of the deindustrialization that's been going on since the 1980s.
In Milwaukee, almost 50% of African-American males employed through the 1970s into the 1980s were employed in manufacturing, compared to about 32% of white males.
When those jobs vanished, so did the pipeline for middle-class inner-city jobs.
The African-American male prime age employment rate in Milwaukee today is a little over 63%.
And many others are underemployed, working part-time at best. One reason, says Levine, living in inner cities, they simply can't get to jobs an hour or more away.
All of the net job growth in Milwaukee over the last 30 years has occurred in the suburbs. Suburbs that are not connected effectively to the central city with good transportation links.
So where would you go for workers? Well, Wisconsin employers have turned to a totally unemployed and previously untapped labor pool. Women at the Robert Ellsworth Correctional Facility an hour south of Milwaukee, learning factory skills like CNC, computer numerical control, at the nearby technical college on work release.
I've been incarcerated for a little over 2 years right now.
For what?
Drunk driving, and I have a little over 2 years to go. Option stop.
Right.
A 4-year sentence because it's her third such conviction. But Randy Lynn, no last names allowed, is not worried about getting a job.
I know there's jobs out there. I see them in the paper, I see them on the want ads. I've gone to temp agencies, and they're always looking for CNC helps.
Good.
Bethany is doing time for forgery and drug use.
Since I've been locked up, I've been offered a lot of opportunities to change my life and become a different person, and I've taken them.
And what does a misload do to us? Crashes, that's right.
The instructor here, Neil Peterson, seemed genuinely surprised his cons are, well, such consummate pros.
I've done approximately 20 boot camps, and you get a scattering of F's, a couple D's, some C's, B's. I've so far from these ladies that I've been teaching, I've gotten 10 A's, 1 B, and 1 B minus. I've never seen that before in my life.
The fact is, though, that the national unemployment rate for those with a criminal record has been estimated as high as 80%.
Do it again.
And yet, after graduating from the 22-week boot camp, these women figure to actually start work at nearby Wisconsin machine shops while still incarcerated.
How many employers come here willing to hire women from prison?
Right now, we've had 12 who've already gotten involved, and we're anticipating more.
Gateway's Kate Walker has found more employers with job offers than there are trained inmates to take them.
There's no hesitation about hiring them, even if it's for the short term, even if they're not going to reside in the county that the employer's located. They know that they can help them in the interim.
It's going to be a big,
I was told some 70% of these prisoners are in for offenses related to substance abuse, where the recidivism rate may be as high as 9 out of 10. CEO Anderson says that won't deter him.
We heard yesterday that there are employers around here now who don't do drug testing
That's true.
because they don't want to automatically eliminate drug-using employees.
Yes, that's true. That's true. And we're one of them.
Now, in every story about a labor shortage, there's one obvious question. Why don't employers just offer to pay more? Well, because of globalization and automation in recent decades, most just haven't had to. Professor Levine adds the decline of unions.
Keeping labor costs low is part generally of a corporate strategy to keep their overall costs low. Breaking unions has certainly been part of that. The vertiginous decline of unionization in this state since really the early 1970s has been extraordinary, where you had 35% of workers unionized, and today it's 10%.
There's no sign that unions are coming back soon, but maybe, just maybe, a tight labor market is finally nudging up wages. At least Eric Anderson is raising them. 3 years ago, new hires made $9 an hour here. This fall, he plans to raise their starting wage to $15, and within a year, they'll make in the upper teens. For the PBS NewsHour, this is economics correspondent Paul Solman in southern Wisconsin.